Dear friends, welcome back to another episode of The Informant. Today, we're diving into a pressing issue: how Sudan's devastating civil war has transformed into a global battleground. With over 150,000 lives lost and millions displaced, major powers like Russia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates are now jockeying for influence. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Sudan's civil war, which erupted on April 15, 2023, has already claimed the lives of approximately 150,000 people and forced more than 10 million to flee their homes. The conflict has spiraled into a full-blown humanitarian disaster with widespread famine and horrifying atrocities. On one side of this brutal struggle is the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and on the other, the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, commanded by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti. Both factions stand accused of war crimes, including ethnic cleansing, mass rape, and the use of child soldiers. What was once a national crisis has now escalated into a global power struggle. Countries like Russia, Iran, and the UAE are stepping in to back different sides. Russia has been notably active, providing military and oil support to the SAF, while the UAE has allegedly thrown its weight behind the RSF to counter Islamic influences. These international interventions have transformed Sudan into a geopolitical hotspot. Sudan's strategic significance on the global stage cannot be overstated. Rich in gold reserves with fertile land and a critical coastline along the Red Sea, the country has attracted the attention of foreign powers. Even as peace negotiations continue, both military leaders, Burhan and Hemeti, show little willingness to compromise. They each claim to be fighting for democracy, but the reality is that civilians are caught in the crossfire, desperate for a civilian-led government. Without a clear resolution in sight, Sudan risks collapsing into a failed state, much like Somalia, as foreign powers continue to fuel the conflict. To truly understand the scope of this crisis, we must look at Sudan's turbulent history. Located in northeastern Africa, Sudan is the continent's third largest country, following Algeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. With over 46 million inhabitants, Sudan holds a geostrategic position close to the Horn of Africa and boasts 530 miles of Red Sea coastline, an essential trade route between Europe and Asia. Formerly colonized by Britain and Egypt in the 19th century, Sudan gained independence in 1956. Since then, it has been plagued by internal conflicts and civil wars. Between 2003 and 2008, Sudan faced a brutal civil war in the western region of Darfur. African ethnic rebel groups accused the Arab-dominated central government of marginalizing and oppressing them, neglecting the region's basic needs. In retaliation, the government launched a violent crackdown, supported by local militias known as the Janjaweed. The atrocities committed during this conflict were staggering: mass killings, rapes, and the forced displacement of civilians. By the end of the conflict, an estimated 300,000 people had been killed, and 2.7 million displaced. Sudan's internal turmoil continued into 2011 when the country lost its southern region after a long civil war. South Sudan declared independence, but the separation left Sudan politically and economically weakened. This instability was only worsened by ongoing conflicts and a fragile economy, further eroding the country's ability to govern effectively. In 2019, after widespread protests fueled by economic hardships and demands for democracy, Sudan's longtime dictator, Omar al-Bashir, was overthrown in a military coup led by General Burhan. A transitional government was formed, intended to lead the country toward civilian rule. However, in 2021, tensions flared again as Burhan, alongside the RSF, dissolved the transitional government, detaining the prime minister and shutting down communications, plunging the country into chaos once more. The RSF, originally formed from the notorious Janjaweed militias, became a central player in this power struggle. Under Hemeti's leadership, the RSF evolved into a major military force, often acting independently from the Sudanese army. Hemeti, who played a pivotal role in suppressing anti-government protests, was promoted to the deputy leader of Sudan's governing council after the 2021 coup, positioning him as a key figure in the country's political landscape. The rivalry between Burhan and Hemeti finally exploded into full-scale conflict on April 15, 2023. Both sides mobilized their forces across Sudan's major urban centers, leading to violent clashes, especially in the capital Khartoum. This urban warfare is unlike anything Sudan has experienced before, trapping millions of civilians in an ever-worsening humanitarian crisis. Sudan's descent into violence underscores the failure of international efforts to ease tensions between the SAF and the RSF. The best hope for a peaceful resolution lies in a united front, with global powers pushing for a permanent ceasefire and a return to civilian rule. Western and regional powers must resist the temptation to pick sides in this conflict. Instead, they should work together to contain the violence. Egypt has already supplied arms to the SAF, while the RSF has sent fighters to Yemen to support Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Hemeti has also forged ties with Libyan warlord Khalifa Haftar and Russia's Wagner Group, raising fears that the conflict could spill over into neighboring countries. Neutrality from global and regional powers is crucial, as is the effort to demobilize both sides. France, the US, and Saudi Arabia have already tried to mediate a ceasefire, but these efforts have so far been unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Sudan's civil society has a critical role to play in preventing the conflict from morphing into a multi-factional war involving different ethnic groups. Decades of civil war have left the country awash with weapons, making the stakes higher than ever. To avoid further chaos, Sudan's tribal and religious leaders must be encouraged to act as mediators. Once a permanent ceasefire is achieved, Sudanese civil society, along with international partners, must work together to transition the country toward civilian rule. A major part of this process will involve security sector reforms, integrating the SAF, RSF, and other militias into a unified national army under civilian control. While this path won't be easy, it's the only way to prevent another eruption of violence and a larger humanitarian catastrophe. If you value independent journalism and want to support our work, consider buying us a coffee through the QR code on the screen. Your contribution is essential for us to continue bringing quality analysis and information. Stay tuned for more updates, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest analyses and insights on the world's most urgent geopolitical issues.